question?
I'd like to ask some questions regarding, let's say, secret schools, mystery schools, related to religion or spiritual practice. We're all familiar with world religions and things, yet there seems to be what's known as the hidden hand influencing world events and currents, and that would seem to be through these mystery schools. The most obvious case would be the Freemasons. And can you talk about how these kind of secret traditions relate to spiritual practice?
Well, it would appear that so-called secret societies, secret organizations, and such, secret groups, are wisdom schools, basically. They're just wisdom schools. People who are attuned to the wisdom, higher wisdom of the ages, right? The wisdom of the ages, let's say. Now, I'm not a member of these schools, but I have an understanding, a resonance with them. As a practitioner, then of course, we're all here for finding and experiencing and enjoying the deepest wisdom possible. That's our right. That's our brain's best food, right? Right? Ultimate wisdom. It's ultimate speech, the ultimate word, and so on. So, any school that is dedicated to that, I think it's good. Call it secret or what, esoteric school, mystery school. It's all good. It's a school of learning, higher learning in the true sense of the word. Let's say that's their purpose. And do we need them? Yes, of course you need them. This may be, there's just a couple of people here. This might be a school of higher learning here, or higher understanding. There's no problem with that. It doesn't have to be formal. It just can be a circle of peeps who are disposed towards deeper understanding, deeper wisdom. It's important to them. So you can have that at an organized level, and as some of these traditions or organizations have, you have a hierarchical basis for it, and you have an initiational process for it. And all of this is good, just to take the student through certain stages of discipline, demand, and capacity.
Are there reasons for keeping things secret related to the spiritual or the social primarily?
Both. You have social limitations, where you have conventional norms, where people can only handle a certain kind of behavior or a certain level of understanding. And so that's understood for the most part. I mean, families have to keep things secret to a degree. They don't want their neighbors to know. You may not want your relatives to know. Right? You may not want anybody to know, in fact, right? They should know. Hey, what? You can't know that. You should know it. So, as I stated in the Godfire works, you have to keep private what is private, and keep public what ought to be public. You have to know the difference. And so, when we're talking about secrets, so there's power involved in this sort of practice, secret. I mean, we can say that spiritual practice is about secret practice. Right? When you sit and you're going into the deeper inner sanctum of your own consciousness, that's secret. Even though you can talk about it, nobody knows for sure what you experience or how you experience whatever you experience. So that secret, in this case, is part of this process. We're all secretly endowed, say, right? Each one of us, right? Connected to the secret world as such, the world of secrets. Which doesn't mean, hidden. No, it's there, it's open, occult. You can see it. Be open to as much as you can see. And so, if this is the case and we're talking about going down consciousness, then the question is whether or not you need that school. That's really the question. Not whether it should exist or not, because the school is serving a purpose. Any and every school, every institute, every organization, serving some purpose or cause, either formulated by the Constitution or just because they assemble peeps, and peeps need to be with peeps. So, regardless of what's going on, then peeps need to congregate, right? Or peeps need to be taught. They need to learn. So all of these things are satisfied and gratified at relative levels according to the peeps. And so then the issue of secrets again, becomes more an issue of qualification. If you're qualified to know the secret, if you are intelligent enough to know the secret, and if that's the only way you can get the secret, whatever the secret is, let's hope it's very important, you know what I mean? When you learn the secret, if there's a secret to learn, we'll make sure it's worth all the waiting and all the hoopla, all the mystery.
There's really two aspects to the secret, and it's to keep those outside the organization from knowing what's going on, but also to compartmentalize members within the organization from knowing things only at certain levels. So, in effect, somebody joining an organization like this literally doesn't know what they're getting into because they don't know ultimately what lies ahead in it. What is the logic of getting into something?
Well, that has, let's say, that has let's say a purpose in terms of developing the individual, working through stages, steps, going the step route, the hierarchical route. And so there's a certain amount you can learn that way. There's maybe so far you can go. It depends on whether or not there are politics involved. If politics are involved, and of course you might like that more, you might not, say. But whether or not that is the way consciousness or spirit would have it, I think that's the question here, say. Could anybody prevent you from learning something you're here to learn? No.
The process is one of initiations at many levels. With the Freemasons, some say there's 3 degrees, others say 33. I think ultimately there are 360 degrees, just logic dictates. But at each step there's an initiation. Can you talk about initiation relative to spiritual practice? Well,
initiation is, if it is based upon a certain kind of understanding of, well, discipline and empowerment so that you can, with a certain degree of authorization, continue along a certain line of activity or study or practice in this case. And of course, initiations, depending on the school and what's going on, could be the only way you can get to such knowledge. Certain people, again, as I was just saying earlier, that when there's a certain level of secret that you're here to get, you're going to get it. It's going to be divulged to you. It doesn't necessarily have to come through an organization because, I mean, let's face it, if the organization exists, then it exists in consciousness. If the organization is keeping secrets, then they are already in the consciousness field, or in the akasha. And so they are accessible by appropriate and skillful means, if and when necessary. So they can't prevent you from learning by initiation process what you're needing to learn and so on. So I want to make that distinction. Okay, go ahead.
In a sense, with our practices here of heart love, there doesn't seem to be any levels as such. Is this kind of practice superior to something that's based on other than strictly heart love? And
well, the heart love is very direct, because the heart love is not about knowledge games or a gradient scale relative to what you can know because of a scientific agenda or not. A scientific agenda here, on the other hand, and most of the peeps or associates here into music and very advanced levels of music in terms of avant-garde or creative music, at least while they may not perform it, they're open to it, so their minds are definitely resonant with a higher level of creativity, so that's good for them. So, in terms of the need to recognize the levels of consciousness, then in some cases we have karma that determines the level of consciousness, and so while you may have certain grades to go through depending on the institution outside of here, then that can be more or less accomplished by your karmic understanding of something, right? And then in terms of the heart, getting back to the heart consciousness, which is not about what you can know in terms of knowledge, but what you can know in terms of a certain state of consciousness, in terms of spirit awareness, then that's I think a different process, completely different process. So it's more opening on the spot. Apart from your karma, whereas karma and the gradient scale of learning is one form, of, let's say, unfoldment, perhaps, for some people. It may be a slower form, and you have the more direct approach, which is heart awareness immediately, directly understood as love itself. That might take a person a very long time to get to there. So then the issue is, do initiations happen spontaneously? I would say they can happen that way, yes. So just having the ideal of opening to heart love and practicing in the spirit of that can take you through any number of initiations. But they won't be according to a particular school, but they will be according to the process of opening, which is more direct and less determined by the mind itself, or ego, or intellect as such. So you can do it, but again, if you have the karma, if you have a karmic need, that is, when I say if you have the karma, if you have a karmic need, right, and that is in terms of conditions that is set up for you to learn slower, then you do that. It's not a problem. Or to learn directly, then you do that. In any case, spirit can facilitate. Spirit can facilitate if and when necessary, as far as I know. Spirit can initiate you, in a sense. But if this is the case, if this is in fact the case, then you see that you'll be moving more towards a higher level of consciousness. And there won't be any mistake in that. And that's real, it's not imaginary. You start feeling it, vibrations change, the refinement process starts to occur by itself. And so that's, let us say it's spontaneous initiation can occur. But not for everybody and not in the same way. Again, then now we're talking about karma, but then we're talking about time karma relative to whether or not the person is ready for that kind of evolutionary leap this lifetime.
Does adherence to or participation in a series of structured initiations perhaps impede or hinder one's ability to initiate or rise free of that and develop?
Listen, the whole purpose of discipline is freedom. The whole purpose of freedom is discipline. So they go hand in hand. It's not just this radical concept of freedom, like, no, the idea of freedom is mastery. See? And mastery in this case means mastery over conditions. It means discipline. See? And so what you want to do is bring this level of mastery of conditions up to a level where then, of course you can create from that, or as we're talking in terms of heart consciousness or a spiritual dynamic, then it can work itself. It can do what it has to do so that you're already here now, basically, without having to go to, let's say, the grade school system. So that's what it is, the grade school system, which is useful, sacred, very sacred for peeps. But some peeps may be born already advanced, and so they need something else. The same with the musical concept, where there's a certain type of music that is agreeable to most peeps, and then we're talking about like standard jazz, big band jazz. It's great, but there may be more a person's ready for, because those tensions and the structures that correspond to those tensions and their kind of release relative to rhythms and harmonic and melodic releases there are no longer suitable for everybody. So peeps go beyond that. So they need, to adapt to what it is that is coming down for them to unfold into, beyond the, let us say, so-called status quo, as it was. And so then you have, in terms of the grade system schools, you have something that is specifically given for you to know and know more, which is what you were talking about earlier, which I think could be a good way, but it might not be the only way it comes. Okay. Now, in terms of a person's karma, where they don't have this kind of, let's say, openness to the wisdom approach, then they may need to be taking a little bit at a time, because they may start to become constipated, maybe too much for somebody. If it's too deep, if it's too already somewhere else, then it may be too much. So you have to take it in grades. There's no doubt about that. Okay, but then there are those, and this is the exception in terms of those who are ready for the heart approach. Then they want it all. So they want it all already, and they want the all made available to them already, so that they can adapt to that spontaneously.
The Masons and groups like that would use the term master or mastery differently than you, in the sense that there's an emphasis on being master over one's domain, master over one's environment, maybe master over other individuals. Your use of the term masters never seems to be mastery over something. Could you comment on that distinction?
Well, it is mastery over, right? Over suffering, over neurosis, over the mind and its programs, so it's over a whole lot of limitations. But then there's the grace of mastery and spontaneous creativity, which is a whole other level. And so, once you get to that place, it is so much what it is, you don't have to talk about mastery. It just is. It's not a person, it's no longer any particular form, it just is what it is. What needs to gets done, right? What needs to be done gets done, in a certain way. So we're talking about different schools. One would appear to be more like a Zen school, which is more consistent with what's happening here, in a manner of speaking, although that's a very disciplined school, but so is this very disciplined. It's just very informal kind of discipline. But you're tested all the time. See, that's what you don't calculate often is how many times you've discussed how many subjects with the teacher, and the teacher's helped you to understand a certain kind of kernel, core, realization relative to all those topics. All of that works on you. So whether that can be tantamount to initiation, so we can say that. It could be. Could be beyond that. More than just a level of discipline. May have levels of karma blown away in one sentence the master gives you, or one word, right? It's just, you don't know what it is. It could be that kind of a devastating, whatever it is, impulse or contact. So, and then, but since it's based upon love, you don't feel it as any kind of damage or anything. You say, well, what was that? And you move from there, and then you start adapting more immediately, psychically. So he has a different kind of psychic feel, as far as that goes, that we have to say is more yogic, and more dependent upon the spontaneous, say. That is intuitive instincts rather than rational. Many of these schools really want you to develop your mind, so you develop powers of discrimination and analysis, right? Whereas that is not so much the emphasis here, although the teachings are more or less a critique of the mind and program. So I think we make up the difference in a very, very gentle manner rather than in an organized manner. So if you can read the book, then you get it. You can get it if you read the book.
One aspect of any of these esoteric schools is an inevitable sense, sometimes a specific sense of us and them, or us versus them. Certain conditions prescribed to those in the group, and everyone outside of it are maybe the unwashed masses, or something lower generally in their view. Can you talk about this kind of us versus them mentality?
Well, it may be conventional, and maybe necessary and appropriate, because it is real. You are, members of a particular school or sect or whatever, and so it is an us and them thing to a degree, but it has to be light-hearted, say, us and them, not heavy-handed, but light-hearted. Say, like we have our music here, and we have our like esoteric levels of music, it's kind of crazy music, but it's a light-hearted difference in terms of what's going on, because the other peeps have a right and a need to play what they're playing, so this is never seen as, better. This is just different. It has its own function. So it's never seen in egoic terms at all. So this is what needs to be done, so this is done this way now, because it's how to do it. At this level, at this point, boom. This is what we do, and there it is. And hope for the best. Okay, great, no problem. Okay, but in terms of relative to other peeps, no, it's not about us and them in that sense. Again, lightheartedly, yeah, sure. There are those who play this kind of music or are into it, and those who are not. But everything is balanced, so they have to do what they're doing out there, not to be into this philosophy. It's all part of the thing, because they may be into this philosophy at some other point in time and space. The idea, if the spirit is active here, then it's about grace, and so all peeps are given the so-called respect, that graciousness, what all for all peeps. See? And that's what it is. Say, oh, you're there, you're in that school, that culture, no problem. It's no problem here.
Again, within these schools, there seems to be an attitude maybe used to strengthen the control of the membership, of us being the superior beings to those outside. So this is one way people are held within the organization. The other is that people take vows, agreeing to horrible fates in some cases for revealing anything of the organization. So this is a very different kind of practice.
Well, this has nothing to do with any of those kinds of processes, those kinds of threats and those kinds of exchanges. No, this is more out of the heart, and that's what it is. So this wouldn't be considered legitimate by their standards. But again, then we also don't have any games that are going on in terms of politics like that. Mass is living here, and the idea is you start to live a more natural, gracious life, and it's easy, it's open, right? The wisdom is there, it's being given, the music, the demonstration is there, the sacrament of music is there. So everything is more like in the silence of what's happening for those who are monastically inclined, and they can put that together in terms of their own appropriate lifestyle, and it's no problem. Yes. So here it's like understood. You hear it, you feel it, you act, let it work with you, and you become a person who can respect privacy. You need your privacy. Whether or not you have to be secretive or whatever, that's relative to your situation. But privacy is important. Isolation, relative isolation is important. You need to start to manage your own vibrations, and that is to say, you have to be aware of the fact that when you're around other people, there's a collision of realities. There's always this collision, but you don't think of it. You say, oh, no, it's good, it's exciting, mixed. Right, you don't know where you begin or end once you get mixed up in it. So you become overmixed. You don't know where your view is or what your view is on one thing or another. So the best way to come to terms with that is to be able to be alone, in a sense. Enough so you know where you begin and end, what it is you have to do. And so this kind of process is natural for some, impossible for others. If you have a family, fine. Find time for yourself if you have a family. If you have a marriage, find time for yourself. I don't mean your ego self, I mean just your own balance. It's your own reality, your own world, your own universe. You have to find balance being that. And as soon as you get into overmixing, then you become insecure, you become neurotic, you start to ignore what you need to be paying attention to, and it doesn't matter what your initiation level is. If you're neurotic and you're suffering relationships or family karma or any kind of karma, that's where you are. High or low initiations, doesn't matter. Karma is going to take its toll on you. Now, when you're free of all of it, then of course you have something else to teach the peeps.
A group like the Masons is similar to an army in that it's hierarchical, and also from the lowest participants feel a strength from participation and belonging to something greater than themselves. Do you see any validity for something like that really in terms of spiritual practice?
Sure. Yes, that can be helpful and supportive for some people, no doubt about it. I respect traditions and schools of thought. And they're essential, they're critical, they're all stepping stones to a higher level of understanding, or they can be potentially useful to peeps. And so when we're talking about any school, every school operating from the heart, it's going to welcome peeps, because it should be based out of some kind of compassion and understanding that people need the knowledge, they need an opportunity to deal with their own intelligence, and they need the ultimate food of a certain kind of wisdom. A higher viewpoint or something. They really need that. And in the spirit of whatever that is, even if it's fundamental relative to what may be happening here, still useful to the peeps out there. That's why when I was asked recently at the Barnes & Noble church, I call it a church, my church of choice. All schools and no schools. I was asked, what I thought of a certain kind of secret society. I said, well, it could be good for you. It's a discipline. Good. Not that it should be anybody's prison or casket. I won't go that far. So use it as much as you feel you can use it. But don't think that because it is a school and because it has more knowledge than you, that that's all there is to knowledge and knowing. I told the person, you want to try and get the right books if you're interested in knowledge. Right? So thought.
Another aspect of the Masons, and I assume the other esoteric schools, is that the truths, let's say, that you learn at one level, at some higher level you're taught that those are all wrong. You're essentially diverted into something, and now we're going to reveal a higher truth that contradicts what you were taught before. And this is part of a kind of destabilization process all the way up through the ranks. You're constantly taught things that you're convinced are true, and then they show you, no, that's not true at all. This is something higher than that. Do you see a value in this kind of approach to practices?
Well, if the system works, then that's self-evident that it works for the peeps. Whatever the school is, doesn't matter what the school is. If it works and it survives time, so it works. There's no doubt about that. It works. It's great. People learn what they need to learn. They're tested. Hopefully they are tested. Hopefully they are recognized according to their skills, right? And advanced accordingly. If it's a fair system, then no problem. So here we don't have that kind of system exactly, but I do deal with peeps on an individual basis. And I think it should be an individual process, period. It shouldn't be a group process. You have peeps together, but individuals. It means you have to be responsible for yourself. Not so much yourself, your thought, your mind, but your relationship to time, space, energy, and matter. To the universe. You're the ultimate architect, what you create. Your cause. You have to be cause. Because. If you're not, you suffer the consequences of feeling less than, rather than up to, whatever it is that your potential is.
The Masons have a very kind of physical basis to their spirituality. When they talk of something like the rule of law, it comes from the ruler, the measure, the truths of physical reality, the building, and all this. Can that kind of physical adherence to the physical offer a springboard for the spiritual?
Oh, I'm sure you can use anything, but that's really just a stepping stone there. Okay? That gets you thinking in terms of maybe measurement. Hopefully that's a step towards the infinite, which is already the case. It's already the basis for the whole thing. So if you start with infinity, then anything you use, regardless, because I'm into sound or music, so it's about infinite possibilities, that remains the case. That's Lord. Infinite possibility is Lord. It's God. Infinite. The infinite, period. The infinite. So with or without a school, with or without a system, in terms of grades, that's always the case. And some people can jump on it. They can make their own leaps and bounds there. And so here, there's no real need for formality. This is a kind of retirement sanctuary of sorts. And so people can make their leaps and bounds according to themselves and what kind of conversation you want to bring to the teacher here, and take it from there. So it's more creative, be open, just like the music, and the way the teachings are done, which is on a moment to a moment basis.
One of the lowest level things taught within the Masons is that one's function, both as an individual and within the organization, is to coalesce power. And power, once coalesced, should never be dissipated, particularly for any so-called inferior being. So is there a spiritual basis for this kind of thinking?
There may be a psychic basis for it, but not necessarily what I would call a spiritual basis for it. Because when we talk about grace, that's a whole other process. Grace is open-heartedness and a willingness to share to the infinite. Again, we go back to the source, the divine itself, infinite. Right? The infinite, no limits. It's called 100%. Heart. It's not 13%, 13.5% heart. It's 100% heart. That's it. That rules. That's the sun of suns. Of course, you have a bad day, so 70% heart. But it's 100% heart, trying to get up to its potential. So there's a totally different basis, where you're talking about psychic, economic, materialism. So when you're talking about that, we don't want to use the word spiritual when we're really talking about material values and material issues. We want to keep the word spiritual here relative to the transcendent, that is really outside of the realm of the negative and positive completely, which has to do with the material domain.
I'm speculating, but I think one of the key points in the development of Masonry was finding a way to keep people participating in projects that they would never see the outcome of. They were the great builders, so they would build things that they'd be born into a family that worked on and die never seeing the completion of whatever cathedral or pyramid. Or
well, I think now you know, you're using the word Masons. There's a scientific basis for their whole system, and so it's kind of like an academic, institutional intelligence that, you know, has purpose, has a goal. It's very clear intent, clear purpose, and what it's trying to do is develop and cultivate in the individual skillful means, so basically. Of course, it's really a materialistic approach, an intellectual materialistic approach, but it achieves what it needs to achieve in the world in terms of making you a constructor, right, an architect of sorts. Yeah, so yeah. It's good up to a point, certainly. I don't think Leonardo da Vinci would have any problem with that. So, oh, you're making this, no problem, man. I like that. Let's do that. Let's try it this way, though, outside of your idea. How about this idea? This idea. So the idea is to have more ideas than what are given.
So do you see spiritual development, if that's a correct word to use, in subservience to even a physical project greater than oneself? Is that a means?
Spiritual development? I'm not sure what you're talking about there. So when you have to be more clear as to what you mean by that. If you're given a certain kind of construction project and you're saying spiritual development relative to what? Well, we're talking about intellectual development, so there's really minimal. It doesn't have anything to do with the spirit as far as that goes. Okay, as I just said, I brought in the word Leonardo da Vinci. It's a real creative genius, spirit. And said, well, okay, can we go outside those ideas? Because, you know, boom. So we're talking about then this creative spirit in terms of genius, intelligence, which is always besides whatever is normal, whatever it is. It's open. Then you have transcendent genius, which is beyond that altogether. There's no possibilities, beyond possibilities.
I would say a system like that is designed to keep people participating whether or not they necessarily see a value in what they're doing for themselves. What do you think? If an individual is a participant in something like that but recognizes a point where they don't feel it's serving their needs?
And then it depends on what you mean by spiritual, see, and how that fits into the structural. We're talking about a structural academic requirement, and the idea of spiritual is, you have to define what that means relative to that. See, then we can say spiritual might be inspirational, then, okay, so you really have to define that. Again, here the idea of the spiritual is transcendent, like the Great Spirit itself, which has more functional applications, I guess, in terms of your breathing and, you know, your sitting and your meditation and so on, where you're trying to get it, like we were saying earlier, the wind. You want to get the wind, right? You want to get in the Tao and the stream, what's happening. So you bring your limitations, your view, your self-project, right? You bring your project, right? Your given project, your architectural, your construction project there, and then you hope that some inspiration comes in. Well, that's a lower form of the spirit function. It's lower form, so relative to the materials at hand. It might give you kind of insight or intuition, but it's not really higher as such. It's basic intuitive linkage to what it is you have to do. But that could be not only in an institution, that could be as, you know, you're driving down the road and your intuitions need to be applied there to keep you from, you know, danger and so on.
These schools seem to have in common with certain religions a sense of being the chosen ones, or the superior ones, or the entitled ones, or something. But obviously a world full of various groups that think they're the chosen people is, you know, not a very stable place. So,
well, that's a political ego trip, basically. Because once the heart opens, what are you going to say about the chosen one? We're all chosen. I'm just here. The heart is the heart. It's that simple. So it's not about that. It's just being true. That's it. One could be true. I mean, we're all chosen to do that. No, we're not doing it. Because you're here. You're here because you're chosen to be here. So we're all chosen to be here. So no, we're further chosen to be true. It doesn't matter whether or not you can step up to the plate and be as true as you can be, whether you're at school or not. This is it. This is your moment. It's your cause of yourself here. This is a creative moment. Each moment is creative. So the life should be viewed as an opportunity to be as creative as your heartbeat can allow you to be right now.
So the creative, in some cases, and certainly within these practices, is not forced into structure.
It can be. No, there's structure, discipline. So that's the thing, freedom is discipline. So when you see the results of what's going on here, it's enormous structure. Enormous structure. Books. Structure. It's architecture in a sense. Maybe not high quality because it's trained. It's not developed along those lines to produce things according to certain scales, such programs. Say. It's not built on that. It's more spontaneous, more like nature would have it for itself as it works when the wind comes. It's a natural force. It's not like having a big fan. You're generating force because we're trying to imitate the force of nature because we're so out of touch with it. We need to generate the force of nature and feel we can better understand forces of nature since we are that originally. So all you got to do is, guys, stop, tune in, and know what you are, know who and what you really are beyond your self-programming and your educational and or institutional programs.
So when somebody comes to you as a practitioner, you're not attempting to fit them into a pre-arranged structure necessarily.
No, on the other hand, you say the idea of your life is already the structure. So the intuition of the teacher is such that, okay, you've been structured this way, that way, now you need this. See, this is what you need, because the master is the master. It's not an educator. The master is the master. That means the master is in tune with what needs to be done now in terms of balancing the time-space world beyond a person's comprehension of what it is. Because you're here to find peace, you're not here to have the master stress you out as much. So it's such a certain kind of grace process, where you get tension and release, but it's always for you to step out of yourself, and limitation, by nature, limitation, where you're holding yourself back, and too much structure. So structure is good, but you want to make sure you are not overwhelmed by too much structure, so you don't feel you're sort of like imprisoned by your own, let's say, need of structure. So you have to understand that with the intelligence released, then you create structure ad infinitum in all directions. As it must need, and needs to be. Go ahead.
As opposed to entering a prescribed structure.
Well, you start there. That's a good starting point. The whole idea of getting a degree in an ordinary conventional educational system, is so that you show some capacity, say, some sense of scale, say, sense of perspective. That's what I mean by scale. It's a kind of scale, perspective. And then from there you take it from on to whatever then outside of the institution is your scale, your perspective. So, for instance, in personal terms, there was an attempt to consider conventional ideas of music, but it wasn't part of the same perspective. The scale here is given from the inside, so then there's a problem with that. So I said, no, I don't have to convince people one way or other. This is perfectly what it is. So it's beyond having to convince anybody, because I didn't want to start a school based upon that. So.
These schools also, essentially, participation is for life, is generally the intention.
Well, here, let's start with that. This should be free. Free of, well, sure, that's good, but these are confines, of course, to what? To determine your commitment to something. That's like an old-fashioned relationship to somebody you realize after a certain while that not only is there no love, but she's changed. She's not the glamorous babe she was when you first met her, right? Everything's changed, everything's sagging. Say, no. So, of course, right? So the opportunity to change is a creative and spiritual right everyone has. So,
and yet one's participation in these types of things predicated on agreeing exactly not.
Well, you have to change, well, that's whether or not the individual wants to be confined by that kind of casket or condition. So if you agree to those conditions, and of course if you breach your contract, you have to pay the price, whatever that is. You take it as it comes. The idea is you have a choice to either be involved in these things, these kinds of self-limiting propositions, or you can have more freer base, so more natural circumstance. But it would appear that you can learn a lot in the kind of configuration you're talking about in terms of that institution, that secret society. And so it depends on whether or not you're willing to sacrifice that, or your life, as you said, in some cases, your life could be terminated in these societies. So it's like against the corp. Murder Incorporated. Right? This kind of barbarianism, I don't think has anything to do with spirituality at all. Right? It has to do with the old-fashioned, old-school headhunting. Right? Jungle law. Nothing gentlemanly about that, but if you have to, you have to. You do what you have to do. Right? No, that's very intriguing. But of course, there's a hard approach to it, which is outside of these kind of exotic societies. There's a hard approach, a more native approach. I think genuine, more intuitively correct, more loving, more deep, more profound. Right? Maybe less materialistically dazzling and spectacular, but
well, all this brings up the question of vows in any context, and what the lifespan or life cycle of one's vow is. What, is a vow entitled lawfully to die a death? And
depends. You have to define what it is for yourself, what the contract is, and whether or not you should be a word beyond that point. You say, well, I took a vow here, let's say, one vow, one religious organization on it, to do this, do that, whatever. It's up to you whether you feel you're bound to the vow or not. You create it, you can discreate it if you ask. Discreate it. Hopefully it will serve your purposes to stay in your vow. Of course, for some, that's all they can do, that's what they should do. For others, it's like divorce, you better get divorced. Right? Just like you had to get married, which is a form of divorce. Right? So then you have to get a divorce from that form of divorce. You have to keep divorcing and dividing and subdividing, right, until you maybe find what you need. Right?
So this kind of ties to the question of freedom in discipline. I mean, one say, well, I'm going to stay.
Well, you give up what you're talking about here is you're giving up your freedom to choose and dictate what you feel is necessary. And so we're talking about a fear institution, so we don't have that. We don't support that whole fear mechanism for whatever reasons. We don't think that's natural. So this might be considered a radical kind of institution of sorts, but no, the institution is already, nature is the institution here. Nature is already the perfect structuralizer and perfect organizer and perfect initiator already, and a perfect architect as it is. So then it's a matter of recognizing at what level these things are real to the individual, whether or not you have sufficient genius, to answer certain questions for yourself, or make certain determinations for yourself that assure you of your spiritual right to choose and to be free in the moment.
Another aspect of the schools that would differ from here is the information, which they would certainly consider to be wisdom, is codified, and so if you arrive there, you get the same wisdom. The wisdom is here first, you come to it, as opposed to here where maybe the individual is first and then the wisdom is suited to them.
Well, it's not that you're first, but it's also not that you're last. You check in with the teacher, which is like free wisdom, right? And you get what you get, right? It's in correspondence with your timing and your being. So it's not that you're first. No, wisdom is first, the fire is first here, and then whoever comes is treated gracefully from that level. But not that you are first or anybody else is first and the next person is last or second. There's none of that happening as far as that goes. The realization is first, if you're going to put a number on it, first, and then everything else is more a manifestation of grace, and whatever that means in terms of problems people have, or struggles. It's all about managing it from the heart, and that means as gracefully as possible.
Within these traditions, at the level of one's initiation, essentially all are viewed as equal. If you're on the 11th level, you're on the 11th level. So, whereas in this type of practice, you've always emphasized that everyone is different in the sense of being unique, conditions unique.
Well, everyone is already on their own level. So that's understood. You are your own level. Now, to what degree you know that as a level, of course, it's an issue. But a person that studies themselves carefully, if you are a scientist and you are observing your phenomena, which is what a responsible practitioner should be doing in all cases anyway, then you should be able to quantify what level you're on. So then we go to divine agreement. You have a scale there of levels. You say, well, I think for the most part, I'm on the causal level, and on occasion I get these moods, and so I'm on certain occasions I'm on the astral level, and then on certain days I'm definitely in the physical body and I feel it, and it's like, whoa, ouch, and so on. And on rare occasions I'm up there on the mental level. I have a thought, an idea, comes from nowhere, and useful. Right.
So these esoteric schools go far back, to Babylon, Sumeria, whatever, ancient Egypt to get there.
Yeah, but you see, there's a physical component of it. There's a psychic and spiritual component beyond that. Remember, what you see down here is the effect. This is an effect of other causes, higher causes. Maybe those peeps in these organizations could agree with that. That what they're seeing is, what they're able to create is a manifestation of something that's already, this is like the lower octave of it. So, lower rungs, the most densified, solid form of it. So that means that outside of the body there's even more going on there. So if you're open to that kind of intelligence, that wisdom is infinite and not limited to any particular time, space, or system, or society as such. That it's like open, it's all angles. So, universal intelligence there, boom, 360 degrees, right? All the way around, all the way up and around. Then there's a lot that can be gotten outside of the confines of one particular system. Here, it's openness to the fact that you are, the potential of the infinite. Already, the sound. I say, the sound. We use the word hue. That implies, okay, you're the burn, freedom, liberation, the divine power to change your life and recreate for yourself. So it's really a matter of giving people the power to change and adjust and recreate their lives according to, let us say, some kind of spiritual practice. Right? That means practice that enables them to feel and taste and know the grace as fact, not as a theory or belief system.
Again, these schools, some of them put a great value on skillful means, even if, and maybe even especially if applied to exploiting people outside or at lower levels
hustling
of
people.
organization.
Yeah, hustling.
Right. So they
manipulations and deceptions and all kinds of strategies and machinations. Yeah, that's for them to do, but that's, if you're doing that, then you have to take what comes with that. Okay. That's all. Here, we have a certain level of wisdom that is operating, that frees you up from the need for these kinds of political machinations, for whatever reasons, for self or other aggrandizement purposes. It's all materialism. So it's materialism. In some cases, chained materialism, unchained, right? Gone crazy. But here, it's more about the simplicity of nature and respecting the dignification of the sanctuary life as a good starting place to recreate your world from the inside out, and peace first, right? Bring that out to your world, whatever it is you have to do. Say, stop, look, listen, feel, be, know. Right.
I'm not sure how to ask this, but to contrast, let's say, a Masonic view of being a hidden hand influencing the world's events versus being you know, a teacher or a master operating in private and somehow
Well,
having...
we're not going to undercut their purpose and their mission. Okay? They're here for a purpose and a mission. And so they should have let's say, the country's best interest as their own interest. And that's what it should be. And of course, we're talking about having some, in terms of an organization, having some sense of a moral compass. And then it depends on how that is interpreted. In terms of what? A left or a right view? Or a right or a wrong view? Say, our way versus your way and so on. Depends. So we want to then trust that the peeps here are in tune with something. If it's democratic value, which I'm not a Democrat as such, and so I don't feel it should be left up to the peeps in all cases, so it might be a whole different kind of species here. I don't think it should be left up to peeps that don't have a clue. I don't think so. I don't want a person who doesn't have a clue running the ship. I'm supposed to be necessarily. Say, who's that, Pedro? It was Pedro, no, by steering the ship. He just got it, he don't know nothing. He's in training, right? He's getting on-the-job training. I said, damn! I'll go back there. Show me where that steering wheel is. I'll take over on-the-job training. Give me that training. I'll take the ship where it needs to go. Just plain.
And yet, you know, as a spiritual being, you have an influence on the world without ever consciously attempting to do that.
Well, the idea is, if we're practicing meditation or contemplation, which is the same thing perhaps, or breathing, stopping and breathing, then you're not excluding. It's openness. It's being, like the earth, completely. When you stop, you say, I can feel the earth, I'm being the space, the etheric plane of the earth, the trees, everything. It's being it. So it's not like you're isolating it as if you could isolate yourself or your little trip from the whole thing. It's a self-trip. Yeah. It's strange. And Earth is not about that. Earth is just being the Earth, right? It's offered everything. So what are we going to have? Our little cults, our little cliques, right? So, well, it's us and them. We're Earth. It's just open. Now, of course, again, keep what is private, private, as a rule, and keep what is public, public, as a general, conventional, relatively good approach to dealing with the so-called functional material world, not your psychic world necessarily, or your sense of a spiritual world beyond the appearance of the material world or the more or less programs that we see operating this material world by political agenda, by educational means, or by multimedia manipulation of the consciousness of the peeps in general.
The Masons in particular put a great emphasis on legacy. They leave, you know, huge buildings behind, they leave plaques commemorating various events, all this.
Great achievements. Right, so that's fine.
What is your view of leaving a legacy?
What kind of legacy are we talking about? Being true? That's the legacy. Just be true. Okay? That's the legacy. Now, of course, there may be a lot of CDs, there may be a lot of things, but just being true. That's a native approach. It's not about, you know, impressing people with materialism. No, the quality is there. Say this. You see if there's a superior intelligence involved in this or not. If there's genius involved or not. That's the whole thing. Once you reach a certain level of creative spontaneity, or genius as some would call it, then that's it. You're already where you should be. Okay? Where it's happening by itself. I mean, if you can't recognize your perfection, then you need to go to see the head shrink or something. He's got to shrink your head because it's too big. You need to have your head sort of shrunken. It's too big. Too big for the body. Top heavy. Right? So here it's not quite about that at all. So more heart heavy. Not head heavy, it's about heart heavy. The heart is heavy, yeah. Open, but heavy, because there's so many people that need help, need grace, need wisdom. So this is a native approach. This is not in competition with anybody. There's no such thing. No competition, please.
So in your sense, it's creating for creation's sake, or serving others?
According to spirit, not according to intellectual drives or intellectual standards at all, right? The trees don't operate by that way, right? Stars don't operate by that. They operate by a whole different set of laws. People are still trying to comprehend what's going on, why things happen and so on. So we're talking about the core creative forces that are not completely known yet. Right? Too many mysteries that seem to elude the intellectual mind, but they don't elude the intuitive mind. Because all these things are possible. They've always been known to be possible. Multi-dimensional worlds have always been known and written about by mystics. Scientists are now proving it to themselves, right? Thousands of years later, because they had the gadgets now to materially prove to them that there is such a thing as space, right, and it's etheric, and that there might be living energy between objects and so on. Right? So they didn't know that before. Well, it wasn't proven. Right? Nobody's ever proven what love is yet. What is it? Okay. Where's the proof? Where's the physical proof of it? Can you put it under a microscope and see it more there than anywhere else? Go ahead.
No, but, you know, like they say with other things, but you know it when you feel it, or, you know. I mean, is that a valid enough definition? Maybe
for the moment, that's what it is. Sure, it's all in that. That's your experience, of course. Is that valid? If you feel this connection, of course it's valid. It's the whole spiritual thing. It's valid based upon the feeling connection.
And yet,
that's also music, by the way. Feeling connection. Is that valid? Is music valid? That's not a question. Okay. What's a real question?
We might experience something as love, and then, you know, oh, that was love.
No, but we're not going to say that was love. You're going to say that's love.
Okay. But
so you're wishing it was love, yeah. Right? So then you can hold a person to it, right? That's the whole idea of ordinary love is. So you hold a person to it. So why? If it's love, then if it's real love and heart love, then it's more like the sun. It's radiant energy. It's not about holding anybody to anything. It's just about out and out and out and out to the infinite. And this is what we can say is relative to the practice of the masters. It's infinite radiation, radiance. Nothing you were talking about in terms of this society or secret society had anything to do with radiance, or divine radiance at all. So we got to point to divine radiance. May the blessing be. Hugh.